All right, today we are diving deep into the fascinating and, frankly, wild world of silver. Now, you'd probably think of it as gold's cheaper cousin, right? But as we're about to find out, silver has a personality that is completely its own. Let's get into it.
So, let's just tackle the biggest question right out of the gate. Is silver really just gold's little brother? More affordable, maybe a little more jumpy? It's what a lot of people assume, but honestly, the real story the data tells is so much more interesting.
And here's our first big clue. Check this out. When you actually look at the numbers, silver's typical month-to-month price swings are roughly twice as wide as gold's. I mean, that's not a small difference. That's a massive tell. It shows that silver has its own unique character. It doesn't just follow gold's lead. It dances to a much, much faster beat.
So to really understand that wild energy, we've got to look back. Our first clue is hiding in its price history, going back over 100 years. And believe me, this is not just a random line on a chart. There are some really distinct eras that have made silver what it is today. Okay, let's set a baseline for ourselves. Think back to the 1990s. The average price for an ounce of silver was sitting around $4.85. For a whole decade, that was pretty much the norm, a relatively calm time for the metal. Now, let's fast forward just 2 decades to the 2010s. Whoa, the average price absolutely rocketed to over $21 an ounce. That is a more than 4 times increase in the average price. So what on earth happened? How did this sleepy metal suddenly become this headline-grabbing asset? Okay, let's look at the whole journey. This table just lays it out so perfectly. You can see those quiet sub-$1 prices from way back in the early 20th century. Then, bam! Look at the 1980s. That huge spike, that's the infamous story of the Hunt brothers trying to corner the market. And this more recent surge, well, that's a whole different story, driven by this powerful mix of growing industrial demand and a totally new wave of investor interest. So, we know silver is volatile. We know its price has gone through these incredible shifts. But is there any method to the madness? Our second clue is going to come from looking for patterns in the calendar, what some people call seasonality. And you know what? The data shows a surprisingly clear pattern. If you look at the averages since 1990, January has been silver's best month by a long shot, with an average return of positive 4.6%. Now compare that to June, its worst month, with an average loss of 1.6%. It's kind of like silver has this strong start, weak summer thing going on. And if you look at the full monthly breakdown, you can really see this taking shape. That strength at the start of the year is undeniable. The entire first quarter, January, February, March, is historically its strongest period on average. But, and this is important, remember these are just averages over many, many years. They give us context, but they are definitely not a crystal ball for any single year. Okay, we've looked at history, we've looked at the calendar. For our third and final clue, let's play detective. Let's figure out what other things in the market tend to move with silver. In other words, we're going to identify its closest friends and its biggest enemies. And to do that, we just need a quick handle on this one concept, correlation. Don't worry, it's super simple. It's just a score. A positive score means 2 things tend to move in the same direction, like best buddies. A negative score means they move in opposite directions. That's it. Simple as that. So who is silver's biggest foe? It turns out it's the change in the gold to silver ratio. Now that just measures how many ounces of silver you need to buy 1 ounce of gold. With a huge negative score of minus 0.90, it means that when gold starts getting way more expensive compared to silver, it almost always lines up with a really bad month for silver itself. They have a really strong inverse relationship. And its biggest friend? Well, you might be surprised. It's silver's own momentum. With a strong positive score of plus 0.72, this tells us that whatever trend silver was on last month, it tends to carry over. Winning streaks and losing streaks are just part of its DNA. This table really puts it all together for us. You can see that big foe and that best friend right there at the top. But look a little further down. You see it moves opposite to the US dollar, but it tends to move with mining stocks and even its bullion cousin, gold. Although, look at that, the direct link to spot gold is actually weaker than you might think. This weird mix of factors is what makes it so unique. Okay, let's bring it all home. We've gathered our clues. The crazy volatility, the dramatic history, the weird calendar habits, and all these complex relationships. It's time for the big reveal. Let's solve the mystery of what makes silver, well, silver. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of it. Silver has 2 faces. It's living a double life. On one hand, it is a crucial industrial metal. It's in your phone, it's in solar panels, it's in all sorts of manufacturing.
This ties its price to economic growth and helps explain why it sometimes moves with stocks. But on the other hand, it's a monetary metal. Investors see it as a safe place to put their money, a store of value, which explains its ties to gold and currencies. This dual identity, that's the engine behind its wild personality.
So, at the end of the day, silver is caught in this constant tug-of-war between its two selves, the factory workhorse and the financial safe haven. This means the real question isn't just about price, it's about which of these forces, global economic growth or investor fear, is going to pull harder. So, given its two faces, what story do you think silver's price is going to tell next?